Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. We're about to get started. Give me just a moment. Hope everyone is doing okay. Today, we're just looking to build a full stack application using the latest version of Next, Prisma as our ORM, connecting it to a postgresql database. We'll talk about a few things along the way. I have not coded this, so we will be building it live together. And we'll just use the documentation and Google and whatever other resource we can get our hand on to get it done. So let's get ready to jump into some code in just a second. All right, so starting out, currently have a Next.js application inside of my VS Code. I'm not sure what version it is, but let's find out. It's going to be the latest version. I think it's on 16. Yeah, 16.0.7. So that's the version of Next.js that we are using for the app. I've gone ahead and just cleaned up the home page. And while I'm at it, let's remove and update the code in the global.css. In just a second here. A few things set up. All right. Okay, I'm going to add some code. Okay, I've just added some code that will define the height, the width, and the text size of the application. And I've also set the overflow on the x-axis to be hidden. That way we don't have so much movement from left to right on our home page or on any page for that matter. Let's go ahead and start up our project on the local host. And it should be going on localhost 3000. So let's check it out. Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing, my friend? I hope you've been doing okay. All right, and we see we are up and going on localhost 3000. Give me just a second. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So I think we're at a point where we're ready to connect our application to a database. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be using Prisma as the ORM, and we'll be using a Postgres database via Neon Vercel. So that way, deployment is easy, it works well together, and it should be a smooth developer experience. That's what's most important. And also that it's free. So the reason I like Postgres is it's a more production grade. Right. So the reason I like Postgres is because it's production grade, it's reliable, and works perfectly with Prisma, which is the ORM we'll be using. And if you're following along, this is going to be more of a modern, a popular backend stack right now with Nextjs and server actions. So you don't necessarily need an Express server, no REST boilerplate. Everything kind of stays in one code base. So that's what I like about it. So Prisma is a really simple way to interact with the database, and it's safe. It's an ORM that gives us a typed client. So instead of writing SQL, I can write TypeScript and get autocomplete validations, and it's very type safety. So it makes things a lot easier to work with, protecting the data on the front end as it flows through to our server and to our database. And the good thing about it that I like is it comes with a schema file that makes it very easy to make changes and migrations and organize our data that we'll be storing within the database. So with that, we're going to go to the Prisma documentation, and they've made some changes in the latest version of Prisma. So I know that a lot of the videos out there right now won't necessarily work because it's not with the latest version of Prisma, and that's what we'll be using in this project. And for those that might be interested or may not have been aware, basically with the changes to Prisma, it's it should now be a cleaner database driver option. So Prisma now supports both the default Rust engine and JavaScript driver adapters. So for our build tonight, we're going to just stick with the default Rust engine because it's the fastest and most stable for Postgres. But eventually we'll migrate over and we'll be using the JavaScript driver adapter just to see what it works or just to see what it's like. The other thing that it gives is going to be better support for like a serverless edge environment. This is going to matter because Vercel Postgres is serverless, and Prisma now handles the connection pool and serverless behavior more smoothly. So that's a good thing, and we should notice a slightly better performance with our applications as well too, versus what we've had previously. And then finally, it is more efficient with the Prisma client generation. The newest version generates a smaller and faster client, which loads quicker and gives better performance inside of our server actions. Mm-mm-mm. And the good thing about it as well, we don't necessarily have to make any changes with how we write the code. It is a little different with the setup. And I'm going to show you basically how to set it up based on the documentation. And we'll kind of learn and go through this together. All right. So from the directory, you want to create the project. And we've already done this by installing the latest version of Next. I already have it on screen. So you'll start by installing the latest version of Next.js, and I already have the application up and going, so there's no need to repeat this step. I went ahead and stuck with the default settings, which basically gave me all of this out of the box except for which basically gave me all of this out of the box. And if you are following the documentation as written, make sure you cd into the directory that you are now holding the Nextjs project. And then in step 2, the first command that we'll install is the prisma tsx at types/pg -- save dev. So we'll just copy this. Then install it into the project. Give it just a moment while it is going. Hope everyone is doing okay. Got any questions? Look, feel free to ask away. Oh, I guess that rhymed. And it is complete. Next, we'll install the Prisma client and the Prisma adapter PG and also .env. If you're using a different database provider, install the corresponding driver adapter package instead of the Prisma adapter PG. We are good to go. And then once we've initialized Prisma in the project, once installed, excuse me. Once installed, we'll want to initialize Prisma in the project. So now we are being asked to set up our database. We'll select the region. We'll name the project dev roadmap. Name yours whatever you like. It has now created the project. And in the terminal, we get the message success. The Prisma Postgres database is ready. We've created the initial prisma.schema and a .env with the database URL environment variable already set. And we can confirm that by going into the project. We see the directory into the project. We see the directory Prisma with the schema.prisma file. And we also have .env. We will be defining our schema, applying the migrations. We can manage the data with the Prisma Studio. And we'll also make sure that we generate this based on the steps outlined in the documentation. So next, let's go ahead and define our schema. So in the project, Prisma schema.prisma. Yikes. Wow. I think. Okay, so as I mentioned, let's go ahead and define our schemas. The first one will be a model named checkpoint. We will give it a ID with a type of string, and we want this to be dynamically generated and unique. We'll then have a title, which will be a string, description, which will be a string, and we'll make this optional. We'll want to keep track of the status, indicating whether we are done, or we'll want to keep track of the status, and this will be stored as a enum that we will create in just a moment. We'll then keep track of when it was created using date time, and we'll set that to default now. Now let's create the enum, which will give us the ability to structure the statuses that we have. That way we can keep the data clean, consistent, and we're not storing too many different statuses. So we'll go enum status to do, doing, done. The default status for our checkpoint. The default status for our checkpoint will be to do. Now that the model is created, we'll need to get access to the variables in the .env file that can either be loaded by our runtime or by using .env. So let's confirm that we are importing .env. And we see it at the top of the file. Then we'll need to run the command to create the database tables. All right. And as you can see, we're receiving a validation error. Let's correct that now. Okay. Now let's reattempt to run the migration. DFAULT. My apologies. I didn't realize I was on mute, but be sure to update the spelling of default. And after you've done that, we'll reattempt to run the migration to the database. And if you don't have any spelling typos, as I just did, you should have a successful migration. Then we'll run a, then we'll run then let's run the command npx prisma generate. Let's run the Prisma Studio just to confirm. Let's run the Prisma. Let's run the command npx Prisma Studio to confirm our changes did take place. Just copy this command. This is the URL to our Prisma Studio. And as you can see, we have a checkpoint table with a ID, a created at field, description, status, and title. Perfect. That command, that migration also generated our Prisma directory. Let's see. That command also gave us access to the Prisma client. With that, we'll have the ability to access all of our Prisma configurations and models throughout the application. All right. So I think next, let's add a function that will give us access to the Prisma client throughout the project. And the root of our application or our project, we'll type in the root of the project, create a directory named lib, and inside of it, we'll add a file named prisma.ts. I'm going to paste in a function that basically is going to give us access to the Prisma client. I am currently receiving this error message because this is not the correct path to the Prisma client. So we'll remove the text. We'll keep the and symbol and we'll go slash. We want to get inside of the app directory, inside of the folder named generated, inside of Prisma, then inside of the client. So I think I'm going to make a change, and this is a dated function. So inside of that directory, inside of the directory, we're going to import or create a function that'll give us access to the Prisma client. Basically, what this is doing is establishing a connection to Prisma, and if one exists, it's going to use it. If it doesn't exist, then it will establish one. This is also going to allow us to use this function throughout the application, get access to Prisma, which not only gives us access to our models that we created within the schema.prisma file, but it'll also give us access to create or mutate or query the data within our database. So at this point, we are ready to set up our database. So at this point, we are ready to set up our database. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be using Vercel to store my data. And I'm using a Postgres Neon database within Vercel. Once you're logged in, it's free to set up an account. Once you're logged in, it's free to set up an account. You'll click on storage, then create a database. We're going to select the Neon serverless Postgres. It should default to the region that's closest to you, but if it doesn't, just take a look through it and make sure that you have the appropriate one. Then you name the database whatever you want. Once you click create, it'll take a few minutes to create a database, and you should get a message that the database has successfully been created. If you click on hide metadata, if you click on hide metadata and quick start, here we have access to the .env information or the environment variables that we'll need to store within our application, which gives us access to this database. So what we want is the in variables under .env.local. We'll click on copy snippet. Make sure that you get the check mark. Then we'll head back to VS Code, and inside of our .env file, we can actually highlight all of the text within this file, delete it, and just paste in the environment information that we copied from Vercel. And just like that, we have established our connection to a Postgres database using Prisma inside of a Nextjs 16 application. So now let's test out this connection by querying the data on our home page to see if we have anything within the database. Inside of the page.tsx file, this is where our home page and our inside of this page.tsx file, it represents the home page of the application. And this is where we're going to query and display the data from our database onto our localhost 3000. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is make this a asynchronous function, as we'll be awaiting a response back from our database. So we'll just keep the name of export default and just add async. In order to gain access to the database, we'll need to bring in Prisma. So we'll go import Prisma, and be sure this coming from @lib/Prisma. And then as we review the documentation, we want to create a const and set it equal to await Prisma, the name of our model, and we're going to use the find many method. Inside of the function, we'll create a const name what did we name this? Checkpoint. So inside of our function, we'll create a const named checkpoint and set it equal to await Prisma. And we want access to the checkpoint model. And we're going to use the find many method. And we're going to store those items within the variable named checkpoint. And then we're going to map over the object, and for each one, we're going to name it something unique, and we just want to display any information that we have on screen. So currently we don't have any checkpoints within our database, but let's go ahead and add one now. The Prisma Studio makes it very easy to add an item to the database. So let me adjust this view so you can see it a little better. All right, sorry about that. To confirm the connection to our database, we're going to access the Prisma Studio and add an item manually to the database. Query So we'll add a description named testing. We'll make the status to do, and we'll add a title of test title. Be sure to save the changes if you're following along in each individual row or each individual cell. Be sure to save the changes in each individual cell, then click save. So we received the error message back. So let's go ahead and make an attempt to add a checkpoint manually into the database. We'll begin by adding a title, a status. Oh, looks like I forgot to save the title. We'll set the date to now, and we'll add an ID of 1. Let's save the row, and the row is inserted successfully. All right, now let's head back to now back in our editor. We'll go ahead and bring up our local host. Mm, mm, let's see. Getting this error. Hmm. I think this matter, but I think. Let's see. See something here. So is it saying that I didn't update it? Hmm. Uh-oh. Checkpoint desktop. Hmm. Mm-mm. Hmm. About this for a second. Let's see. Should probably be. See. It's prisma. That's all right. Let me see something. Is this in the current database? Hmm. Uh-oh. All right, let's try this again. So we see the text. Hmm. Points. Let's try. Restarting this. Uh, All right, let's head back to our Prisma Studio now that we've done the migration, and add a new checkpoint manually. So we'll click Insert Row or add a title, Java script, save the change, add a status of to do, save the change, a description for it can be test JavaScript description. The created at will set to now. Save the change. And for our ID, we'll just set it to 1, then save the change. I wonder if this is because I need to make this a string, but it shouldn't, that shouldn't be it. Let's click save. Got the notification that the row, we see the notification that the row has been inserted. Let's head back to the editor. If we refresh the page, we now see JavaScript as the title on screen. Let's display the description as well. There. So we see the title and description displayed on screen, which confirms that we have a connection established between our Next.js app and our Postgres database via Prisma. With the ability to create a checkpoint out the way, let's go ahead and add let's go ahead and add the ability to create a checkpoint using a server action. In the root of our project, in the lib directory, we'll add a file named action.ts. We'll begin by marking this file as userver to distinguish that this is server side and we want to gain access to it throughout the app, including client components. We'll then create a export default asynchronous function. We'll then create a export default asynchronous function named create checkpoint. We'll pass in form data to gain access to the form data object. We'll then create a const named title and set it equal to form data.get. This is where we will be getting the title. And for type safety, we'll store it as a string. And we'll include .trim just to make sure we don't get any white data or blank spaces. We can copy this line of code and paste it in underneath. This const will be named description and we'll gain access to description. For validation, we'll say if no title or no description, we want to throw a new error. Be sure to include 2 lines for, sorry, I forgot to add an additional line. Be sure to include it. Then we'll need to get access to the Prisma client. So we'll import Prisma. And this will be coming from /prisma. And we'll just go await prisma dot checkpoint dot create. And we'll be creating data, which will have a title, description, and we'll set the status in this event. We'll set the status to do. To refresh the data real time, we'll need to bring in revalidate path. That's going to come from next path. Excuse me, that's going to come from next cache. Basically, this is just going to get the most up-to-date data from the server with Nextjs caching mechanism. With Nextjs caching, excuse me. Ooh, if I could talk this evening. With Nextjs caching, it's going to automatically keep the data on screen unless we refresh the page, which we don't want to do. So we're going to bring in revalidate path to revalidate the data on the server. And then after we've created the checkpoint, we'll just gain access to revalidate path, and we just want to revalidate it on the home page. So now we'll go back to the page.tsx, and we're going to import that function we just created. Now we're going to import the create checkpoint function we just created. Be sure it's coming in from @lib/action. To use the function, we need to pass it in the HTML form element. We'll then use the action method, and we'll pass in the function that we want this action to use. We'll then add a input with a ID of title, a type of text, the name of title, placeholder title. We'll click save, and we see it listed there, and I'll remove hello. Underneath input, we'll bring in text area. Underneath input, we will use the text area tag. This will hold the description. So we'll give a ID of description, a name of description, and we'll include placeholder description as well. Have our title and description. And then finally, we'll need a way to submit this information, and we'll use the button element. I'll just include create checkpoint, and we'll pass the type of submit. Let's test it out. We'll give this a title of create function, description of create. Create front end checkpoint function, then we'll click create checkpoint. And that is working perfectly because we now see the create function. We see that checkpoint that we just created now on screen. So I think with that, we're going to conclude this evening's stream. We'll come back probably first thing in the morning, add the ability to update and delete, clean this up a little bit, and then maybe even bring in Next off for some user authentication.